Hello everybody and welcome to my next tutorial. My name is Maltanan and today I've prepared something very special for you guys, and I wanted to record this tutorial so bad and for so long time that I don't even know where to start. What I'm going to show you today are some amazing tools that I've created in Adobe CS3. Oh, and by the way, this tutorial can only be followed in Adobe After Effects CS3 Professional as far as I know. So if you don't have it, then you can still watch the tutorial and see why it is worth having. Okay, so I hope that these tools will take your compositing to another level. Okay, let me just show you what I'm so excited about. What I'm going to show you was not possible till Adobe CS3 came out, and that's why I'm so excited, because finally I can take my vision to action. And what I've prepared for you today are some presets, aka custom effects. You can only use those presets on Windows, because my installer only works for Windows, but you can still use those on Mac, and I will show you how at the end of this tutorial. So let's get right to it. Here we have a shot of Susie. By the way, everybody, this is Susie. Susie, this is everybody. And Susie is going to assist me today with this tutorial. And the first thing I want to show you, and this is basically the focus of this tutorial. The first thing is the PixelSampler. So let's just drag it onto the stage, and the important thing is not to drag it onto the footage. You have to create a separate layer, and to do that you just have to drag it onto the comp window, but behind the area that any layer sits, so right in here. As you can see, I have a new layer created, and I have a Polygon Studio PixelSampler effect applied to it. And what this does, it takes a certain point of a certain layer, and in return it gives you the color of the pixel that you've chosen, its value in grayscale, and its luminance. And also you can select not only one single pixel but an area of pixels, and that's the whole point of this custom effect. So as you can see, I have a point right in here. I can put it wherever I want, but first I have to choose a layer. So the layer is Pulse Susie Medium, and as you can see, instantly I get the color from the pixel that I've selected. White, gray, green, that's right. And now I can increase this sample size. Let me just show you how. By dragging this, you can see already I get the selection area, and maybe I will change the color to red. Oh, that's better. And as you can see, I get a green in here, I get something like greenish in here, which is just the average of all the colors within this area. And here I should get white. Oh, sorry Susie for that. Here I will get white with some yellows coming in, and so on and so on. How this can be useful for you, let me show you. First of all, let's go back to the Susie Medium layer, and let's apply key light for keying purposes, of course. Let's apply key light. Let me just zoom out, and let's select a color, green color. Let me just turn the background so you could see this a little bit better. That's right. As you can see, this is a pretty keyable footage, but as you can see, we have some artifacting going in here. We have some shadows and highlights, and of course we can deal with this by tweaking up the key light, but let's say we don't want to do that, okay? Just for now. This is just for demonstration purposes. If you would like to key something out really nicely, you should create a garbage mat and stuff like that. You probably know all that because there are many tutorials about keying techniques. So I will just show you how the pixel sampler works. Right now let's turn the area back to 1 pixel, and let's lock this palette for now, and we can now, by alt clicking on the screen color stopwatch, we can use the pick whip tool to take the color from the pixel sampler and hit enter to confirm. We get the similar effect, right? Right, but not for long. Let me just go back to my pixel sampler, and now we should change the color back to yellow maybe. Okay, and now let me just zoom in here and see what happens when I increase the area from which we are sampling colors. See what happens? We already got rid of those nasty shadows. If we just select a little bit of Suzy in this, we can also shrink the matte to get rid of all nasty edges, as you can see in this area, for example. See? Pretty cool, huh? And this is already a pretty good key, and as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing else we have to do with this. Maybe let's check the transparency. Well, we see that we have keyed out a little bit of this area in here, so we can now go back to key light and just tweak this up a bit. Maybe something like this. Okay, this one should do. And why I'm doing this, I want to show you one more thing that we can do with this pixel sampler. Well, one of many things that we can do with this. It really depends on what you're working on currently. So let me just call this pixel sampler Suzy, and let me create a new background, which is going to be black. Cool black color. Black is always, you know, fashionable. Is that a word? Fashionable? Never mind that. Let me pre-compose this. Control Shift C. Remove all attributes. That's right. Let's call this Suzy background. Let's alt double click on this and let's apply grid effect and set the blending mode to normal so we don't get any transparent pixels. And now let's apply fast blur effect. Why am I doing this? Just wait a second. Alt click on the blurriness to reveal the expressions, and let's type in wiggle, which is, by the way, a very cool expression. Wiggle with the frequency of 2 wiggles per second and the range of 10, I guess. How does it look? It looks okay, I think. And now let's go back to Suzy layer, and as you can see, the background gets slightly out of focus every once in a while, and we are of course simulating some situations that may happen when you're doing some compositing, so this is just for demonstration purposes. And let me show you how my pixel sampler may be useful for you in one of the ways. So pixel sampler, and remember that you should drag it not onto the footage but outside the area of any footage, but still inside the comp window. So let's zoom in really tight. Okay, so let's call this. So what we are trying to do is that we are trying to find the maximum and minimum values of the blur filter that is happening in the Suzy BG layer. Of course, we could go to this layer because we have the blur filter applied in here and we could check the values, but we remember that we are simulating some circumstances that may happen when you're shooting or when you're compositing, you know, something for real, right? And then you wouldn't have the blurriness value. So let's just look for the right frame. I think this one looks okay, so it's 10th frame, and I think this point would be the best point to choose from. And now let's move back to where it's at its minimum. Let me just zoom in and set the width to 3 pixels, no, maybe 4 pixels, and 4 by 4. That looks okay. And see how the grayscale and luminance value will change as I move to the frame 10, I believe. Oh, they are not changing because I haven't chosen a layer. See, we get the grayscale of 95 and the luminance of 37.3. So basically we are translating the blurriness to luminance or grayscale that we can use. And how do we use it? Well, it's pretty simple. Let's go to the Pulse SUSY medium. Let's apply fast blur. I believe we can zoom out right now. Let's lock this palette for now, so we could use the pick whip tool again, like we did with the key light. And let's drill down the fast blur, alt click on the blurriness, and let's use the pick whip tool to choose the grayscale value. And let's create a simple expression. So let's call this value, or maybe GS for grayscale. And now we are going to use the linear function to change the original range of the GS value. So linear, this is, by the way, a very powerful expression. I use it all the time, really. If you haven't used it before, you should definitely take a look at it. So first the value, next the range of within this value changes. So we've already seen that's between 0 and about 95. And now the range that we want to output this. And this range is in fact the range of the blur that we want to apply to the SUSY layer. So this should be between 0 and maybe 10, for example. Hit enter to confirm, and we are ready to go. Let's do a quick RAM preview. See what happens. We are measuring the luminance value within this sample area, and this changes over time, and we are then changing the luminance value to the blur, to the blurriness value of the fast blur effect applied to the SUSY layer. If you remember, I told you that I've wanted to do this since I ever started to work with After Effects, because one of the first things I did in After Effects was a test shot with some 3D match moving, camera match moving and stuff like that. I wanted to compose a 3D object over a live footage. So, and I had some motion blur, and I also had the footage going out of focus. So I had to key it by hand, and this was pretty difficult to get it just right. And just to show you what I'm talking about, here is this pretty old, very, very old footage. This in fact is a corner of my old room that I used to live in. This is already modified to use this PixelSampler. As you can see in here, this is my PixelSampler. And as you can see, we are measuring from this track point. And by the way, it is a track point indeed. And I've taken the feature center and put it into the position of my PixelSampler by using a pick whip tool. So what I did, I really tracked the shot with After Effects built-in 2D tracker, and then I took the result and applied it to my PixelSampler, and then I've set it to sample from the area of 20 pixels from this point. And the result looks like this. My first attempt to do this was to do a simple 2D tracking, And since, like I said, this was one of the first things I tried to do with After Effects, I came with some crazy expressions to calculate the motion blur and to calculate the blurriness, and it really wasn't calculating, it was rather guessing the values and the direction of the motion blur and the out of focus blur, and it wasn't even close. So the PixelSampler is pretty amazing. And the second I built it and I decided to record this tutorial, a new idea came to my mind, and so I was improving this PixelSampler, and the final result was that I've put so much into it that I've decided to divide it to 4 different custom effects, which I'm going to show you today. So be patient. Let's just take a look at this. You know what, let me just zoom in so we could see it better. I would like to remind you that this 3D robot was rendered without a blur of any kind, not even motion blur, not out of focus, nothing. It was as sharp as it gets, so everything in here is pure After Effects. Okay, so let's move to the next thing. What is the next preset? The next preset is Color Sampler. And basically what Color Sampler does is it compares 2 colors within a given tolerance, and if they match, it then highlights this checkbox. And then you can use this checkbox in your expressions, and the simplest example of how this could be used is this. Oh, and by the way, this is my good friend George, and he's a multimedia, motion graphics and visual effects artist from Poland. He's a pretty talented guy. He did tons and tons of graphics, software, flash applications, website, videos, and other things that just involve creating thinking and a creative approach. No, wait, that's me. You know what, I didn't tell you that before, but I used to be schizophrenic, but don't worry, we're okay now. Okay, so this is how it looks. Let me just zoom in. Cool, huh? And remember, there are no keyframes of any kind. This is just a simple expression that takes the match checkbox from my color sampler, and then it changes the text on the text layer, and that's it. No keyframes involved. And you know what? Let me just show you how this works, and let's recreate this effect from scratch. Let me delete all those layers, and the first step is to take the PixelSampler and let's choose a layer. Oh no, first let's duplicate this layer and let's apply a colorama effect. We can now better see some areas of this picture, and therefore we can measure it better and see the difference, with a bare eye, without having to look at these info palettes or whatever. And I already have this tracked. Let me just show you what the tracker point looks like. This is the track point. It sticks to the edge of my glasses. Oh, sorry, of George's glasses. And let me just close this down. So we have this layer with the colorama effect, and we can turn it off. This is pretty cool, but I'll get to this. Let's go back to our PixelSampler. Let's choose a layer. So eyes 2. Let's see if it works. Let's move the PixelSampler to this area. And why do we have a brown color in here, you might ask? Because we are definitely sampling from second layer. Let's even call this colorama. Let's see, are we sampling from colorama? Yes. See this checkbox? It does a pretty cool thing. We can include effects that are applied to a layer. This is pretty handy to be able to turn this on and off. So we are definitely want to turn this on, and let's zoom in. We now have to look for some frames that may be very distinct from each other in terms of George opening and closing his eyes. And this is definitely the time range that we are interested in. And I think that the good place to set the sample point is somewhere near this area. And you probably know already why I have tracked the footage, because now if I create a new null object, I can apply the tracking data to this null object. As I always do, I always apply track data to null objects. So let's select this tracker, motion source eyes. We have tracker 1 selected. Transform null 3, that's right. And let's move to the first frame just to make sure. Apply both dimensions, that's right. The null object sticks to the glasses. Very nice. So now we can simply parent the pixel sampler to the null, like so, and it moves along with George's head. So now let's set a sample to be 10, for example, or maybe 15. That looks quite okay. And let's see, here we have a basic orange color, and when George closes his eyes we have a green color. You know what? Let's just move this a little bit to the bottom, and that's right. Well, we can see that there are two different colors, right? So this is where color sampler comes in handy. Color sampler, apply to the layer, and now let's set color A to be whatever the pixel sampler is pointing to, and the color B, let's set this to the same color, but this one is driven from the pixel sampler and this one is fixed. This one is constant color. So as you can see, when I move, the color A changes and the color B stays the same. And as you can see, those colors are pretty close, but there's probably a small difference, so the match checkbox doesn't show up. But if we increase the tolerance, it instantly becomes checked, and this is what we want. So now we have to check if the tolerance value is okay. Off and on, off and on. Off, off, off. It's off all the way. And then, okay. Seems like it's working. So now let's turn off this layer. This is pretty cool. We can turn this layer off and we can still sample from it. And so the last step is to create a new text layer, like so. Eyes wide open. Let's zoom out. And let's choose a color for this text. Maybe something like this. No. Something like this. Right from the top of George's nose. And let's apply some drop shadow to this layer. Blur it out a bit, 10 pixels, maybe more, 15. No, let's make it darker, like so. And now the fun part. So let's set the very simple expression, but first let's log this palette so we could use the pick whip tool. Source text, alt click, and we're going to create a variable. Let's call this value equals, Now let's point to the match checkbox within the color sampler and press return, and now the simple expression. If value equals true, and remember it equals true when the match checkbox is checked, and that means that the eyes are closed. So if value equals true, then set the text to eyes wide shut. Else, so in any other case, set this to eyes wide opened. And hit enter on your numpad. And voila, we're all set. As you can see, no keyframes, just one simple expression. So let's render this out again. Ta-da! It works! It's alive! Great. So, what are the next tools that I've prepared for you guys and for myself, of course? Well, they are very similar to those two. So, next one is color HSL, which basically takes a color and then calculates the hue, saturation and luminance values, because maybe someday you will need to know a luminance value of a given pixel, or a saturation value of a given pixel, or a hue value of a given pixel, or a range of pixels if you will bind this sample color with PixelSampler sampler color. Is that clear? I hope so, because it took me a quite long time to prepare this tutorial, and I will tell you that I've been recording this one for 3 days, I think. Each time something got in my way. I was getting a tons of phone calls, then it was again 5 in the morning, and to be more specific, it's 5 in the morning right now. It's 20 past 5 in the morning. It's the only time of the day that no one is bothering me. Okay, never mind that. Let's go to the last but not least preset. I believe it's the last one. And that is, let me think. Oh yes, matching values. And what this does, it behaves very similar to the color sampler, but instead of sampling a color, it can sample pretty much any two values with each other. And then again, you have the tolerance slider, and you have the match checkbox. So if we set this to 100 and B is 0, then the values don't match. But if we set the tolerance to 100, then it's just about right. Okay, is that clear? And remember that you can just combine those presets in a way that, you know, you get the sample color from this sample color, and then you calculate the saturation of it, and then you take the other layer and sample hue, for example, and then you put hue of that color and the saturation of that color, and you set the tolerance and you see if they match. I have no idea how this can become useful, but I'm sure it can, and I'm sure I will discover a way in a few days when I'll be playing with these presets, because I really love playing with those. Each time I use them, I get a new ideas of how they can be used. Oh, and by the way, just to show you how really useful this can be, because what I've showed you so far are some, are not, just real life examples. No, maybe with exception of this test shot that I did some time ago. But I hope that you remember my radar tutorial, aka radio detection and ranging tutorial, which you can of course find on my website www.maltanon.com, but you already know that for sure. Let me just go ahead and import this to my project, and I will show you. I'm sure that we can get the same effect with less effort. Okay, so here I have it, radar.aep. So double click on it. And okay, it was done with the previous version, blah blah blah. And what do we have here? We have our radar effect, which, as you probably remember, I had to make some collision detection expressions, and they were pretty heavy to handle and to, just to figure out how to do it. So now I will show you how we can use a PixelSampler to achieve exactly the same effect with less effort. With no effort at all, really. So let me just take a look at this composition, because I don't quite remember. Okay, the echo, the slider, oh yeah, and the slider moves this, the beam effect, okay, grid. What's this? Polar coordinates and glow effects. Right, okay, so we I believe we have to copy the polar coordinates to this layer and to this layer, because when we are going to apply the PixelSampler, it of course includes the effects, as I've showed you with the eyes wide shut example, but it only includes the effects within the layer. It doesn't include effects that are applied through adjustment layers like this one. So I've copied the polar coordinates to both of these layers, and I think I've removed it from this one. That's right. And now let's go to our aircraft layer and look for that magical expression that made up the collision detection. It was opacity. That's right. Just as a reminder, take a look at this huge expression. And as far as I remember, I didn't even explain it in that tutorial, because it was too hard for me to do it in English, and it was basically too hard to do at all. So please forgive me for that. But now, if you're using new Adobe After Effects CS3 Professional and its brand new features, you can use my preset, aka custom effect, to achieve the same effect without any expressions. So Control A to select all and delete. No expressions at all. So after this short break, let's get back to the tutorial. PixelSampler, and let's drag it not onto the footage, not onto the layer, I remind you, but on the comp window. That's right. And let's set this to PixelSampler beam, because we are going to sample from the scanner. Alright, from the scanner layer. Let's call it scanner. Okay, source layer, scanner. That's right. And include effects, of course, include effects. You know what, let me just save this, just in case. Radar PixelSampler, okay? And we want to set the position of the sample to the position of the aircraft. So what do? We just simply select this layer, press P, select this layer, press P, and then alt click on this layer and use the pick whip tool to point to the position of the aircraft. Hit enter. Ta-da! And now let's see if it works. Hey, it works! Now it's black, and now it's white. Perfect! And what do we do with this? Of course, we twirl down the effects, we twirl down the transform effect, we alt click on the opacity, which originally had this huge expression, and now all we have to do is to create a very, very simple expression that I'm sure all of you can understand and all of you can follow. Which is pointing with the pick whip to my PixelSampler, which I didn't twirl down and I didn't open it, so just forgive me. We will twirl this down and twirl down the effects, Polygon Studio PixelSampler, and here it is. Okay, so we can either choose from grayscale or luminance, it doesn't really matter. And once again, pick whip tool, go up, go up, go up. Luminance, let's use the luminance because we don't even have to use the linear transformation like we did in one of the previous examples, because the luminance range is exactly the opacity range from 0 to 100. So we don't even have to create that variable. We just need to, just point, use the pick whip and point to the luminance value of my pixel sampler, and that's it. Hit enter to confirm. Ta-da, you're all set to go. Everything's done. Everything's said and done, and now the only thing left to do is to do a quick RAM preview to show you how cool this is. Ha! How cool is that? Practically no expressions. Everything's done automatically, so we did an automatic collision detection without expressions, and I hope that you will enjoy these custom effects, because I've really put all my heart into them, and I've tried to make them as universal as they can get to anyone, and that's why I've built this color sampler that gives you the hue, lightness and saturation, and that's why I did this matching values custom effects, which will basically try to see if two values match within a given range, and all that stuff that I've showed you today. And I would really like to see how you use them, so please post some comments on this tutorial. And oh, and I'm also interested in your opinion about those custom effects in general. Do you want my next presets to be published in this format as custom effects? Because basically the reason I did them is that it saves tons of space and makes preset more user-friendly. Just imagine that you would have all these controls as separate effects on the effect palette. It's really not so nice to use, and those custom effects really make life easier, and the effect palette is less of a mess. So I would really like to know your opinion about them. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I really hope to see some responses on my custom effects and on those specific presets like pixel sampler, color sampler, and all that stuff I've showed you today. So now the rest of the tutorial is for the Mac users, because I've decided not to upload my presets as standard presets anymore like I did it in Time Shuffler. So there's no pixel sampler STD to download with for this tutorial. So I will show you guys, Mac users, I will show you what to do to use my presets on a Mac. So first of all, you have to download the Mac preset package that will be available separately on the tutorial details. You of course have to unpack it, and inside you will find two files. One is the standard preset that you just have to copy to your presets folder, and the other one is the XML file that contains the description of my custom effect. So right now this is my install directory for Adobe After Effects. In Mac this is probably different, but I wouldn't know. And within this folder we have support files, and then we have presets. You can just copy this here or create a separate folder called polygonstudio.pl, for example, and then copy it into that folder. So that's the first step. I already have this effect, so I just override it, never mind. And then you go back to your support files folder and you look for preset effects.xml and you open it for editing. Scroll way down to the bottom and then paste the content of the XML file that I've provided into this file and save it. So let's do it right now. Ctrl C to copy, then we go back to preset effects.xml and paste it right above the last line of this file.
Control V for pasting. This is probably different in Mac. I know, Command or Option V or whatever. Just paste it in and save the file. Restart After Effects, and that's it. You're ready to go. Like I've mentioned in the previous tutorial, I'm also planning to do a deployment tool for custom effects so you could do your own and share them. And I hope that this way of sharing presets will become popular in some time, because I think it is really, just comfortable and handy to exchange presets and share them with your friends or on some forums and stuff like that. So be patient, the deployment tool is coming, and I would really like to hear if you're interested in custom effects at all, or maybe you just want a regular presets, but that would just bring me down because I've put much effort to create those custom effects. Yeah. Okay, so once again, Mac users and the PC users, Windows users that for some reason watched the rest of this tutorial, thanks for watching. Stay tuned, leave a comment on my website, and check my other tutorials on www.maltenon.com and on creativecow.net. Till next time, cheers.